Come on, guys. We're going to do this if it kills us. And a 1, and a 2, and a...
Ladies and gentlemen, children of all ages, it is time for the simulcast here on two multiple YouTube channels that don't have the viewership to even make monetizable money, but you should make us monetizable money by subscribing, liking, and sharing the thumbs or whatever you do with your thumbs. Just don't ask this man what you do with your thumbs. Anyways, it's the Court Martial Podcast and TAW Gaming, and I am with two esteemed gentlemen. The first one, again, I don't know what he does with his thumbs. You don't want to know what he does with his thumbs. He just does whatever he wants with his thumbs. Josh again.
Well, I have to remove my thumb real quick. All right, now we're good to go. Thank you for that lovely introduction, Skyler. I should probably wash my thumbs real quick because it kind of smells.
All right, while you're washing that, I want the other man step in here. Now, this man is a man of taste, a man of class. He is one half of the best independent rap group on the East Coast. He is Sean McCarty.
Now, I'll have you know, ladies and gentlemen, that not only do I have thumbs, but I also have index fingers, middle fingers, ring fingers, and pinkies, one of which I broke in a volleyball incident when I was 14 years old. But I use all of them in many different ways and not nearly as grotesquely as I assume is what's happening in South Kakalaki. But as they say in South Kakalaki, McClunky. So I'm excited to see how this goes, Scott.
South Kakaclunky. Also, tell us about your
Jesus
toes,
Christ.
Sean.
No, we don't have enough time for toes. That will be on Super Jam session. Anyways.
You know what? It's funny. Speaking of toes and seeing how my knees hurt a little bit, I did actually get a chance to try a new shampoo called Head and Shoulders, and I did put it on my knees and toes. Just to try it, but apparently I don't have any dandruff on my knees or my toes. Maybe because I'm using the Head and Shoulders on it.
Bruh, eczema sucks. Continue, Skyler.
Okay, I got nothing for that one. Anyways, we're going to go ahead.
Head and Shoulders that might help your eczema.
I do have head and shoulders, and it does fucking nothing.
If you have nothing, we can send you something.
Send me a loaded
I
gun.
got put in charge of trying to control these two.
That's right. That's right.
Not gonna happen.
Go and shtick. So
Yeah. But anyways, we're here to discuss a couple of things. We're going to cover the wrestling news, as much of it as has been happening recently. And then we're going to talk about our fantasy wrestling shows and what we liked about them, what we didn't like about them, what future plans were going to be, and then why we're not going to continue that series. And then we're going to have a surprise at the end of the show. So, boys, are you ready to talk about the news?
I'm sad.
we'll have an intro and everybody's talking at once.
Coming straight to you from the Golden Gate Garage, this is the Wrestle News with Skyler Greenberg.
You good, Sean?
Jesus
It's your
Christ.
intro.
It is my intro.
Go ahead, Skyler.
Anyways, we're here for the news of the week with the Bay Area Brawler. Skyler Greenberg at your service. Now, we have a lot of news. I'm going to try and keep it going as quickly as we can. I mean, we'll talk about it, but some of these are going to lightning round because fuck it. But the first one I want to focus on, and I want to focus on this one just to kind of like get some idea because a lot of stuff was happening. Are you both aware of what happened in Mexico to Don Callis?
I am
Vaguely.
overwhelmingly concerned because I have no idea where this is going.
Okay, so this past weekend for AAA was Triple Mania Triple X. You can make all the sex jokes you want.
I was about to say, where's Triple H?
Anyways, the point is that the main event was El Hijo de Vikino defending the AAA Mega Championship against Kenny Omega.
Okay.
Because of course he is.
How long has he had that belt for? 3 years? And he's defended it, what, 4 times?
No. El Hijo de Vikino won it from him. This was him defending against Omega.
Right, but how long did he have that belt for?
Oh, he had it for a long ass time.
Like 2-3 years. before he finally lost it.
Now, to be fair, because of COVID, he couldn't go to Mexico to defend the belts. So that's why he didn't defend it as much as he should have. But that's whatever. The point is that Vikino won the match. It was another one of those long matches that Kenny Omega is known to have and will get 6 stars from Dave Meltzer and all that stuff. But that's not why I want to talk about this. Now, Don Callis was in Mexico, and he was there to, heal it up with Kenny Omega because they have a feud going right now. And what happened was that Don Callis, in the middle of trying to set this feud up, of cutting a promo or whatever, as the match ended, he got attacked by somebody from the crowd.
Yes.
What happened was that the dude reached over the guardrail, grabbed Kenny Omega, and tried to pull him back from Kenny Omega. This guy apparently used to work security for the arena, was there on an off night, and for no other reason just started to attack Don Callis.
To the point where he had to go to the hospital.
And it wasn't a work. It was like for real. It was for real.
Yeah.
It was for real.
Well, shit.
But you know what the best part is? That the security guard was upset about what Don had said to Kenny. So this man was trying to protect Kenny Omega from Don Callis.
Hey, man, in all fairness to Don, he's been getting some of the loudest reactions lately in AEW. People have loved hating Don Callis, whether, they're drinking the actual Kool-Aid of the business or not. I respect the fact that at least somewhere it is dangerous to be near fans again. Because that used to be part of what made wrestling really fascinating, at least back in the territory days, is when you could lose an eye if you decided to go out there instead of just walking from spot to spot and everybody's happy and okay with their hands getting slapped and all that, because they know the fans aren't a threat. So good on this dude. I don't hurt the talent still. I'm not suggesting fans start getting more hostile. But
yeah, fuck Don Callis. Kill him.
At the same time, real heat is good.
Yeah.
This is a good thing, at least for the industry. So props to Don Callis, because this does not happen often enough for a wrestling business that is reliant on that kind of heat generation.
Again, it's just one of those things where, obviously we don't want fans to attack Don Callis. I just find it funny that this guy used to work security for Arena, didn't know it was a shoot or a work. So he literally was attempting to protect Kenny Omega from Don Callis.
Well, back in the territory days, they sometimes wouldn't even smarten the cops up to what was going on. So sometimes, in some of those Mid-South shows, the cops were no good for the heels, because the heels, they had to kind of figure out their own way, with the exception of, once or twice where where some of the cops would either be smartened up or, would try to break it up regardless. But then there were other times when they were going to no help, so you had to just get the hell out of there. So it harkens back to an earlier age of pro wrestling, even though you don't obviously want, anyone to get hurt, naturally, but still...
Unless it's Don Callis, of course.
Well, but I really don't want him to get legitimately hurt, but this is going to be...
Now, if it was Excalibur...
Yeah,
kill him.
That I agree with. Excalibur, I would not mind it not being on the television. Don Callis, at least, is kind of good at what he does, enough to generate heat, obviously.
Yeah, but again, it only took going to Mexico and doing this promo and staged incident where one of Don Callis' guys attacked Kenny Omega to get Don Callis jumped.
That is pretty funny. That is pretty funny, not gonna lie.
But yeah, I tell you guys to seek out the video and just judge for yourself what you want to do or not want to do with that piece of information. Next, we're going to go to injury news. Have you all seen the video of what happened to Bayley on a house show this past weekend?
I have not.
I have not either.
Okay, so Bayley was working a tag team match. It was her and Io Sky wrestling against Asuka and Charlotte. And Bayley tagged into the match. She was going against Asuka. Asuka tried to do a leg sweep of Bayley, but she accidentally went knee on knee with Bayley, who was charging at her, and Bayley immediately went to the ground and started holding her knee.
Ow.
Oh, not again. Come on, man. Come on, man. Don't tell me Bayley's got another knee injury.
Dude, that sucks.
Yep, the match had to be stopped after the knee injury, and they did throw up the X, and they had to help her out, walk away.
Well, now, I heard, whispers that she was still able to leave the arena under her own power, but she was still limping. But, when you think about it, she just got back. It's been under a year since she came back. It was SummerSlam of last year, back when everybody thought that Vince was actually gone. Walls.
Whoa!
But in any case, it's just, it'll be unfortunate if Bayley has to miss time, but if this also means that this means Damage Control is well and truly over and everyone can start doing their own things again, I don't necessarily hate that idea either.
Me either.
The one thing I'm going to say, actually, is that I think it was a fatal four-way with Charlotte, Asuka, Bayley, and I believe Bianca Belair, who was also in the match. There's a lot of weird coordination with the spot. I mean, you guys, again, go watch the video, see for yourselves who you think is or isn't at fault. I just think that it's just unfortunate that what happens. I don't necessarily blame Asuka. I don't necessarily blame Charlotte. I don't necessarily blame Bayley. It's just sometimes freak accidents happen.
Yeah, and another thing, you could kind of tell that they were kind of leaning towards a Damage Control breakup where they would have Io Sky versus Bayley at some point. And I would say it would make sense for them to use that to put Io over and further submit her, but they would probably have Bayley beat her anyway. But it's just unfortunate.
Yeah, truthfully, I don't know what you do now with Bayley. I mean, this is kind of a... We all said it. Damage Control started off hot and really just died.
Well,
probably 6 months ago. 6 good months ago, before Vince came back.
It started off hot-ish.
The issue is that the whole Bianca Belair feud and Bianca beating all three of them by herself.
Constantly.
That was because they've been trying to make her the female John Cena. And to some degree, it is working. To be fair to her, to some degree, it's working. And I think a lot of the louder members of the audience are really sick of it, in the same way that they were sick of John Cena. And I don't know whether that's ever going to constitute a proper heel turn from Bianca. We'll see. But it's in the case of Bayley, it's just she came back, and like you said, they all got beaten in the powder almost instantly, and then they were just rudderless from there. So I think it's going to be better for Bayley to leave again and come back with something different. She's the most versatile of the group, I think. And who knows, maybe Bayley needs to start working maybe on more of like a part-time situation where she can help someone like Io Sky, but isn't necessarily as relied upon or needed as much, because Bayley could talk just as well as anybody else. Let her use her mouth instead to get over. Don't misinterpret that.
I was about to say, Jesus Christ. Why?
The hard part about Damage Control is that it seems like it's just a cursed faction. Back in May, Dakota Kai tore her ACL in the same match where Liv Morgan suffered a shoulder injury in the exact same match. And then they have the situation with Bayley. It's good that Io Sky has the belt briefcase, but hopefully it doesn't get to a situation where things get worse.
True. Well, I will also say this. It's really hard to have a faction that was based on the fact that Vince isn't there around and thriving while Vince is there.
Yeah.
That basically killed the whole idea and point of the faction. And in fact, as a matter of fact, funnily enough, they all lost basically in the way that Vince would have wanted them to lose when Triple H was booking. So I don't know, maybe there wasn't any real destination for them to begin with.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Dude, do you remember on Raw, like around the beginning of Damage Control, when they were involved in that tournament to recrown the women's tag team champions, and for no reason at all, they lost to Aaliyah and Raquel Rodriguez just to win the titles like a week later? That right there was like the death of their momentum right there, because they won again and they got a pinfall over Bianca Belair at Clash at the Castle. And then they lost the tag team title match for no reason, and it was a fatal wound that just continued to kill them over time.
They won when they shouldn't have, and didn't win when they should have, is basically it.
Yeah.
Anyways. Sorry, continue.
No, I said you hate to see it.
Yep. Again, lightning round thing. Seth Rollins on the same house show got cut up, and he was sporting some major juice. You guys can see the picture in our chat. Sean or Joshua can post that here.
God.
Seth Rollins looks like a Viking man.
Stop making me edit.
You know, fun facts. Seth Rollins, I was just watching this on Netflix. There's this series about the Ottoman Empire. It's called Ottomans, and it's like versus Vlad the Impaler or Vlad Dracula, and whoever they hired to be Vlad the Impaler, every time I see him, he looks shockingly similar to Seth Rollins. It's not the same guy because there's a lot less Waluigi cackling in this movie / documentary thing that they've got going on here, but it's no surprise that Seth Rollins has been cast to be in other movies.
Yeah, I mean, Seth Rollins has been, I don't know.
Well, what was the movie that he just got cast for? It's in one of the, not a DC movie. Is it one of the Marvel movies? He just got cast to be in something of some matter of consequence here. And this is, I know that we haven't done these podcasts in a while, but I'm sure Skyler is fervently typing on his laptop to come up with the answer to this as fast as humanly possible. He's
going to be in Captain America Brave New World.
Yeah, there it is. See, I knew that from the entire moment that I brought it up.
Dude, I can't believe that we're getting a Marvel Waluigi crossover event. Get hyped, ladies and gentlemen.
That's right.
Well, we don't know what's going to happen with the writer and actor strike that's happening in Hollywood right now, so...
We might actually get Waluigi in that movie.
Could you imagine how mad Seth would be, though, if that actually costs him that one role and he never gets a Hollywood gig ever again after that?
I mean, that would suck.
That would suck. That would totally suck. It would also suck if Waluigi was never put into Smash and yet Seth Rollins was.
Oh, God.
Or they put Waluigi in Smash and Seth Rollins is just an alternate skin.
Seth Rollins is the assistant trophy with the tennis racket.
Yeah, and one of the taunts is just him going, whoa.
It's literally him just doing the conducting thing.
Okay, fair enough. But here's the thing. While we're talking about sucking, shall we go to Ridge Holland?
What'd he do this time?
Fuck. What?
So let's review, okay? Let's review. In NXT, he did a flip from the middle of the ring, over the ropes, landed on his leg, and tore his ACL. Okay?
Lols.
Strike number 1.
He scoop slammed Johnny Gargano on top of Johnny Gargano's head.
Strike 2.
Ow.
He over-rotated on the belly-to-belly suplex to Big E and caused Big E to never wrestle again.
Strike 3.
As we know it of now. We don't know. He hasn't officially retired yet, but that's kind of...
It's been a year and a half of him not wrestling. It's not looking good.
Well, but we also said that about Edge. And 9 years later, this motherfucker's about to retire again. So
I don't want to have to wait 9 years to watch Big E.
Well, we had to wait 4 years before we could watch Saraya nearly paralyze herself. So all I'm saying is it's not out of the realm of possibility that he's completely gone yet. And whether he should or not is a different story.
And remember at day 1 when Ricochet landed on his face.
Yeah, but anyways, now we have Elton Prince of Pretty Deadly, a new tag team that they brought up from NXT, and they were wrestling a match against Ridge Holland and Sheamus on SmackDown. And Ridge Holland, listen, you know Ridge Holland's really stupid version of a back body drop?
Yes.
He did the back body drop to Elton Prince, except Elton landed on his left arm too hard because Ridge Holland pushed with too much effort, and, well, the arm injury.
God!
Broken?
I don't know the exact details. I'd have to look it up. But again, Ridge Holland causing another injury. Lols.
He's the female Nia Jax, except he's not related to The Rock, so why the fuck is this guy still here?
That's what I'd like to know.
And
I saw a post that Sheamus was putting up for this guy, and I don't understand it, because Sheamus hits hard, but he's safe. You know, he lands you flat. You know, he's always been a safe worker. This Ridge Holland has a track record.
Do you remember?
A serious track record.
Do you remember like a year or so ago when he was in a tag team match with Imperium, and he gave what was it? He gave Kaiser that awkward looking backdrop where he landed like on his leg, and it was just awkward looking, and he could have easily injured Kaiser.
Remember when his face exploded next to that knee drop from Sheamus?
Yeah.
That was
the best time. That was my favorite version of Ridge Holland.
Yeah, this dude's an injury magnet.
Elton Prince separated a separated shoulder, so it could be anywhere from a couple weeks to a couple months.
God.
But again, he shouldn't be causing these injuries with the regularity that he does, but he does.
He shouldn't be. Find something else to do with your life. Stop wrestling.
No, he belongs in AEW. You call him the cleaner, and he just gets rid of all of the worthless pieces of crap wrestlers in there. You put him in with Orange Cassidy, and literally, I promise you, Ridger Hollandish in the Impact Zone will, even though Orange Cassidy will win the match, because he's obviously going to win the match, have his legs break still, so he can't do the play kicks. Put Ridgeland Hollandish against... who else is really still in some... That whole Best Friends group can actually all go. Cheers.
Here's the thing is that Ridge Holland will get put against Bryan Danielson and break Bryan Danielson.
I know. That's the sad part, is that they would try to make something out of him, and the people that would get hurt are the people who mean well. Just get rid of this dude.
Ridge Holland versus...
This is something that we are all unanimously on board with, and have been for some time.
Yeah. Ridge Holland versus Saraya.
In a put us out of our misery match.
Yeah. First person to get paralyzed loses.
We're gonna move on to Ridge Holland because fuck that guy.
Yeah, fuck that guy.
And again, like I said, I'm going quickly on the news because we got a lot to cover. Cody Rhodes is getting a documentary.
Interesting.
He's giving a documentary? Who's he giving the documentary to?
Himself.
Well, that sounds like Cody Rhodes, if ever I heard it.
Cody Rhodes masturbates? I didn't know that.
Are there placentas involved?
I mean, Brandy's going to be on it, so you never know.
I would give that away on the trailers. That's something that you save for actually tuning your ass in and watching. You don't get to find out whether placentas are on it just from the trailer. No. You got to give them something to work with.
Placentas to the top.
Can you believe that, like, to this day, I still sometimes can't believe that that was an actual thing that was shown on television. Amazing. Well, good for you, Cody. I hope it makes up for you not winning the WWE Universal Heavyweight Championship.
Who needs the WWE Universal Undisputed Galactic Championship when you have a placenta? He should have brought that to the ring with him at WrestleMania. Maybe then he would have won. He would have threw it at Roman and he would have slept on the ground.
What if Roman Reigns wins that from Cody? Shoulder as Roman is fighting him. I got 2 words for you. Red placenta.
That's just gross.
Aren't you sorry?
Yeah, but you would still watch it.
Yes, I would, religiously.
Yeah.
Dear God.
Yeah.
My God.
I don't think we're gonna be able to top that one.
you,
I don't think we're gonna be able to top that one.
You say
So
this.
we're gonna go. Unless you guys have any other noteworthy things that you want to mention in the news, we'll move on to the topic of our conversation today.
Please
All right,
move on.
Well, yeah, so that was a wonderful little wrap up, and hopefully now that we have filled up the fans' anticipation bubble, we can now break and let that water flow through until the
Sean.
topic emerges forth from the womb of our minds.
Sean.
By the way, in case anybody's wondering why I didn't mention any AEW stuff, it's because fuck AEW.
Yeah.
Is there anything worthy on AEW to talk about other than the Bucks are still whiny bitches that refuse to work with Punk because they're toddlers?
Collision?
Exactly. You got anything?
Collision's pretty good. That's about it.
Collision's okay, but it's still Tony Khan booking it, so it's destined to fail.
I mean, there was that match that FTR just had with the Golden Bullet Club that lasted about an hour that has been called the greatest American tag team match of all time.
I hate Juice Robinson. I'm good.
Yeah, Jay White. Sean's good.
Well, I mean, I'll probably watch one of those tag matches that they're having. I mean, I love me some FTR. So, I don't know.
But 58 minutes?
Well, we'll see how it goes. I never booked a 58-minute match. Let's just put it that way.
What is the longest match that you have booked?
I believe it was Cody and MJF 1 in Winter Warfare 1. I think that was a 40. No, that was Cody and MJF 2, and that was the I think it was like a 45-minute street fight.
Okay.
But
anyways, the reason why, again, we're going to move on from AEW because I have no interest in talking about AEW, and neither do my co-host.
Yeah.
We're going to go into our topic, and ironically enough, about booking better than AEW, is our fantasy wrestling shows. Now, Sean, you came up with this idea roughly 4 or 5 years ago, correct?
Well, before we really sink our teeth into the story behind it, and let's just talk for a second about why we're even having this discussion that doesn't involve actually booking the shows. Because we talked about, I don't know, 2-3 weeks ago when we did the Money in the Bank pay-per-view review about whether we even wanted to continue doing ACPW and NWL. And I was over the concept because we've done it for 3.5 years consistently and done a very consistently good job of it. I think that all three of us in SCCG and ACPW and NWL, we've all had our own style, but it's all manifested itself in different ways that have been entertaining and engaging and fun to do and fun to see how much, Triple H and Tony were listening. And I think now we are at the point where we've kind of exhausted the format of it. So we're going to be trying some different things when it comes to fantasy booking and fantasy stylings, because I still want to have some of those things happen. And folks, you're just going to have to stay tuned to see what fun little projects we have gathered together. But this topic that Skyler and I are talking, and Joshua are talking about, that I have subsequently hijacked from the host, is to kind of overview what it is we did, how much fun we had, and where were we going to go if we were going to finish season 4, some of the general storylines we had involved, and some of the highlights, lowlights, and I thought it'd be fun also to kind of share some of our favorite moments from each other's shows. Talk about how you captivated us as fans. So Skyler, to answer your initial question, I thought about this it really started when I was a young lad. When I made NWE, but that's a story for another day. Stay tuned for that as well. But I wanted to do something where I pretty much had conceded the point that I was better at this than the wrestling companies were, but I needed someone to help me prove that, and it's hard to do a draft by yourself. So that's where Skyler kind of hopped on board, and it's because of ACPW, realistically, that Skyler began his journey as the co-host that we know him as today.
Right, because he needed somebody to do it. Joshua did not have any interest at first, and I said, sure, I'll go with it, because I've always marked that, I could book a better show than what WWE could at the time. and then AEW later on, I was just like, I could do something better with these wrestlers. I want to prove that I could do it.
And I think we both did. You know, we had highlights and lowlights, good parts of their shows and bad parts of the shows. And, you know, and eventually, success breeds imitators. And then this guy saw an overcrowded marketplace and yelled, "Me too!" Hashtag. And that's where SCCG came into play.
Yeah, they were both like, "Do it, Joshua," and I was like, "Peer pressure."
No. That's not how it went down. We're not going to gaslight our fans like that.
Yeah.
That's not how that happened.
I was basically like, I listened to a couple videos.
CIW and CAW.
No, this is what happened. I remember this very distinctly. We finished season 1. It goes so well that Josh Gun's like, "Hey, yeah, I'm a do one myself too. I didn't want to, but y'all made it look fun, so I'm gonna do a draft. You want to join me?"
I've never been into the concept myself until I started listening to your shows. And to be fair, you both you've been doing this for so long that you're really good at it. You two have chemistry, so I enjoyed the show. And I just started having ideas, and I was like, I'll take this out for a spin. And then I collided with multiple other people that were driving, and now millions are dead.
Yeah, and actually in the literal sense, too, because we actually have a special edition podcast about it.
Yeah. Yeah.
But nearly...
But that's beside the point.
Yeah.
Yeah. But in any case, it all was based on the fact that, you know, and we had the rules. For those of you who haven't watched it, or if you're new to the program, we basically... The one main rule that we had was that they had to still... be wrestling or have wrestled in the past year to have constituted drafting them. And we made some exclusions to this, you know, here and there, where we kind of made some changes and decided to alter things and, you know, fire the midgets that had been dead for 20 years before the draft.
I don't know what you're referring to, Sean.
I'm sure you don't.
Mr. Andersoni!
Yes, and well, and that's kind of, I guess, where we'll lead into this. I first want to have us talk about our own shows, and then we'll go around the room and we'll talk about what we liked about each other's shows. So let's start with you, Sky, and let's talk about like some of your favorite moments of NWL and what you were the proudest of, especially as you got 3 very solid years of action for a format that many people tried to aim for, but not very many actually succeed in presenting with.
Right. One of the challenges I always had when I was going into this was just kind of the idea of, if wrestling is going to be like mixed, like sports, what is the evolution of sport? What is the evolution of professional wrestling and making it feel like a sport?
It's a mystery.
And the answer I just had was like, okay, if it's going to be like a sport and you're going to do modern stunts, you got to do it like mixed martial arts, because UFC has become so big recently. And the idea of, again, ranking systems, betting, sports betting, challenging those that are higher than you to be the best. And how could you do that in a wrestling contest? Because wrestling has tried to do rankings, and it's always failed.
Yeah.
I mean, back in the territory days, you did have ranked guys across the country. But again, because of the way that it was set up, it was always the revolving champion going to the different companies.
Right.
It wasn't all under one roof, challenging each other to become the best. And originally, I had a main event belt, a mid-card belt, and a tag team belt. And then towards the middle of like season 2 or 3, I was like, if everyone's trying to fight for the main event belt, then what's the purpose of a mid-card belt? So I offed that one just because, again. And I got some good stuff out of the national championship. It's just that, like, it was a mid-card belt in a company that was focused on rankings for the number 1 belt.
Yeah, I'm just giggling because I had that entire I'm not doing a mid-card belt thing in ACPW for the start with literally almost word for word what you just said, which is what just made me chuckle for a minute, because I'm like, yeah, I understand.
Sean's
Because
like,
it is
I'm not a
hard.
monster, I'm just ahead of the curb.
Well, but honestly, I think that it is hard to justify a mid-card belt with especially with a ranking system where you really are taking it that level of seriously to present it in a way where people actually are having, numbers associated to stats and things along those lines. Where like in WWE, it takes a really special person to make that mid-card belt feel like it actually has any weight when you think about it. And Gunther, it really is the first person to do that in how long?
It's been a while.
Been a long ass time.
And also, it's kind of difficult to make a mid-card belt mean something when you have only 30 people to work with. Because you have to section off who's going to fight for what. These people are our main eventers. These people are the tag teams. These are the women. These are the mid-card. You don't have that much room to work with.
Right, so eventually it just became access. But again, I got moments out of that title, which I'm proud of, and I'll talk about in a second. As far, again, as booking, the whole thing is that how do you do a ranking system and keep it fresh? Because you always have the champion on top, and you have different contenders. And I found ways through the ranks to figure out, okay, if these guys are not fighting for the title, they're going to fight towards the title. And they're going to fight the other guys that are ranked. So it set up a hierarchy system of where guys would go. And I found reasons and ways to justify guys coming in and out of the rankings, guys going up, guys going down.
And that was great framework for guys that you maybe didn't necessarily have a full-blown angle for, but you were still making them able to fight for something. And that was actually one of my favorite things about NWL, is that even if the rankings matches didn't necessarily have like, you fucked my girlfriend, now I gotta slap you silly, something behind it, you still had it as a plot device in and of itself that is unique to what your program was. And that, I think, is something that some wrestling company could probably pick up, but you really did find a way to use that in a way that made each one feel more important.
Yeah, especially because most wrestling companies now, like WWE, especially on Monday Night Raw, where they just have a random assortment of matches that just are kind of heatless and they're not really fighting for anything. It's just, the company's pushing this person and not pushing this person. It's nice to have them actually kind of fight for something. Yeah, and killing time.
Right, which is what I didn't want to happen. I want people to fight for a reason, and for there to be a reason why a particular match is happening. Mm-hmm. And even if it's not the best explanation, it still gave people something to fight for.
Yeah.
And then to your second part of the question, Sean, moments that I've enjoyed that I personally booked, there's so many. And I wish I had more time that I could talk about it, but again, there's so many. Just to go on a short tangent, everything involving Pat McAfee was fun for me.
Everything involving Pat McAfee was fun.
Mm-hmm.
Period. And you honestly, you really did. You could tell that you were really having fun doing McAfee heel promos.
Yeah.
You could tell you were, and they sounded good. I mean, they sounded convincing.
And they were the things that absolutely Pat McAfee was going to be there. It would be the type of things that he would do.
Yes. And that was something I thought you did very well, was capturing that out of your talent. Nobody was doing stuff where you go, well, they wouldn't do that. You really did tap into who the people were and what their motivations were. And you tried to give motivations as frequently as you could, which they don't do very often. And, hello. Welcome
Sorry,
back.
I just got cut out. I got attacked by Vince Russo.
Oh, no.
That's okay. Well, he's looking pretty sad nowadays. He needs any sort of help he can. He's just jealous of what NWL really was.
Yeah, he's mad that we didn't draft him.
Imagine if that was one of the picks that we tried to fuck each other with, was to have another manager, Russo.
Well, I don't think any of us wanted to subject ourselves to that, bro.
But yeah, Pat McAfee was fun. One of the things that early on I was very proud about was telling Edge's story of, can I keep up with the young guys? Because I'm too old, I can't do it no more. Do I still have the fire? And it took a Seth Rollins insulting his family to get the fire out of Edge and get him to the world title.
Yeah, and that also was very fun. And then also the way that you still stuck with it, even when I gave you Edge again to do Edge and Christian reunion. And the tag match you made out of that was also quite fun.
One of my favorite things that you did with NWL was you basically predicted the Bloodline storyline that we're having in WWE right now.
Yeah.
Except you didn't milk the absolute purity shit out of it. We got the more abridged version, which was also very, very good in its own right.
Well, I had the feud go for a year and a half. Roman had the belt for a year and a half. It was not a short amount of time.
Well, we're approaching 3 years in WWE land, so...
And to be clear, like, they had booked Roman Reigns way before I got my hands on him. So when I was booking, I was like, okay, I'm going to copy what WWE does, but throw my own spin on it.
Yeah, and I think you did a very good job.
To be fair, your finishes also were a little more creative than WWE's Roman Reigns matches finishes too, because I feel like, especially of late, they've really gotten one-dimensional with how Roman Reigns matches go.
You mean you don't like ref bumps in every match, Sean?
Not if Jeff Jarrett's not involved. If there ain't a guitar shot slap nuts, I don't give a fuck.
Keep that guitar away from my nuts.
That's right. But Roman Reigns draws, so that's a different story. But.
Yeah. Right, and again, picking a future star like Alexander Hammerstone, who, again, is a fun person to book for. The transcontinental feud that was Roman Reigns and MJF.
That was fun.
Was inspired by a promo I did, a throwaway line.
I'm incredibly proud of what we turned that into. Honestly, because if there's going to be a top-level inter-promotional fight like that, that's about as good as you can do it to draw the most business. And nobody ever really got one over the other either. That was the best part about it. It's like... You could tell they were equals, and they were meant to be viewed as equals, but there was never any one major win or loss on either of their parts. And they used to happen all the time. That was what basically the territories were, was come in, draw with your top guy, go to the next town.
And one of my favorite shows that you did, Skyler, I can't remember exactly which episode it was, but it was the one where you had Kurt Angle doing the karate pose with Eric Bischoff, and Eric Bischoff karate kicked the referee in the balls, and you had that great finish with Bianca Belair and Toni Storm, and you had Alexander Hammerstone defeating Roman Reigns, and Bobby Lashley murdering everyone. That was just a fantastic show end to end. It was hilarious, it was brutal, and it made all the sense in the world.
Well, that was Wrestle Festival 3. And again, that was, my WrestleMania held in November. And I feel like Sean will talk about it in a second, but, like, when it came to Season 3, we put everything we could into those two big shows.
Oh, yeah. Y'all were firing on all cylinders.
Yeah, and there really wasn't topping those shows either.
Yeah.
Right. And then I'll get off my pedestal just to mention this one thing. And again, there's so much more that I wish I had time to talk about. But again, I am on time.
It's all on the channel. It's all there.
Yes.
I am on a time clock. Doing the Acclaim's raps.
Those were great.
That is one of my favorite things that you did. That will live in infamy.
I'm not gonna lie.
So we'll fill that out.
Skyler, I enjoyed your raps more than the actual people that do the actual raps in AEW.
Well, it's partially because I was doing a really bad job of rapping.
Yeah.
Because I have no rhythm whatsoever.
Well, neither does he, but the point stands. Well, hey, yo.
Well, ever since
you
were a little girl.
God damn it.
That is one of my favorite moments that where you just popped to be silly because you were doing that and you were so passionately giving that Rhea Ripley pep talk to oh god, I forget her name now. Roxanne Perez. Roxanne Perez. And you threw that in and I knew it was coming but that was the best part about your promo, Scott, is you had a gift for timing to know when to hit lines that people won't see coming, but they're going to make you pay attention to them.
Or just doing the comedy, but if I'm going to do the comedy, do it in the right way. Yeah. The stuff I had to do with the midgets, the stuff I had to do with Marco Stunt, the stuff I had to do with What's-Her-Face, Big Swole.
coming in with the tank and Kurt Angle getting mad.
Coming in with
That
weapons.
Was also quite good.
Shotzi bad
Anyway,
fart.
I'll throw it over to Sean now. So go ahead and answer your own question of what did you enjoy booking and what are your fondest memories?
Well, I really enjoyed trying to bring the old school into the new school and try and see if some of these things that occurred in old school wrestling when it was smaller and you could get away with a lot of those, like how many of those could you realistically get away with in a somewhat larger promotion like that? And I think that a lot of the old school angles that I came up with, you know, it's all about who's doing it and why they're doing it. And everyone who I drafted all kind of, at least in my opinion, they all kind of followed that same archetype.
Okay.
And as a result, that archetype was one where it made it easy for me to kind of figure out who's doing what and where, waiting so long to make a women's division until I could have people mean something in it. You know, and that was what it was all about. I was really trying to go with what is going to be the most quality that I would be into. If I saw it, I'd go, oh, damn, that was huge. You know, like, I can't wait to see what happens next. Mm-hmm. Especially with guys that always had the potential, but I say it all the time, presentation is key. Mm-hmm. You know, it's all about how you present these people. And that meant part of me doing what I did with Titus O'Neil, as ridiculous as it was to demonstrate that. You know, it all really just depends on whose beauty's in the eye of the beholder. And with the right person and with the right mindset, you can get anybody over if you can capitalize on what makes them special and what brought them to the big dance to begin with. And I really enjoyed over 3 years being able to do some angles that were based on historical pieces while still being able to examine the people as a whole. You know, everything that I did with MJF and Cody and how they interweaved from episode 1 until the very end of Winter Warfare 3. That 3 years of, in the same way that you had Roman Reigns as your fixture and as your staple story basically through those 3 years, I had Cody and MJF, even though they were doing two different things most of the time. They inevitably coming together to do the second double turn was the peak moment of what I did. I loved everything with that. The Stone Cold Steve Austin Hollywood Blondes reunion.
That I honestly thought was genius.
And again, it's one of the few times that, like, you got something over that AEW never could, because Brian Pillman Jr. was released from AEW.
Yeah, and that's really a shame, too, but I'm not surprised. It's all about presentation. You know, you take some of these people, you know, I feel like it really, I was going to have, we never finished it, but Damian Priest was going to pin Brock Lesnar. You know, and now you look at the push that Damian Priest is getting in WWE, and I had basically been on the earlier side of that train when I picked him up. Mm-hmm. You know, and everyone that I was able to pass through, you know, back and forth, and even some of these swerves, Katie Forbes.
Shakily dakily.
Shakily dakily Katie Forbes. It's the same idea. Any chance I got to prove that you could make something out of anybody in this business if you tried hard enough and you put them to the right use. In the case of Katie Forbes, just shake around Cody Rhodes. That's all you had to do. Yeah. But it worked, especially because it was all about him divorcing his wife, his pregnant wife, and all that stuff, and, you know, living the high life and all that stuff. Cody's heel turn in general was very fun for me.
Yeah, those promos where he was like the Emperor was just the funniest thing ever.
And it was back when AEW, when he was getting the massive amounts of boost, and they should have just leaned into it and turned him heel.
And they refused. Well, he refused.
He refused. He didn't want to do it. I would have said, well, you're doing it, motherfuckers.
Capitalize! Capitalize!
Yeah. Yeah, literally, there's money, too much money to be made, baby. You can't just think you're applying to a crowd that don't like you.
People hate you, son.
Yeah, seriously. And Bundy, you big fat piece of shit. You come in here, we bring guys to get you over, and you dumb yourself out of position.
Your neck tattooed piece of shit.
Anyway. Oh, God bless Ernie Ladd. Anyway, it's but the bottom line here is that everybody who I wanted to make feel like a big deal ended up, to me at least, feeling like the big deal that I wanted them to. The Cult of Cornette.
Mm-hmm.
How pivotal that faction was. But in the same way, it never really behaved like a faction. You know, and that was also kind of a key to what I wanted to do, is I didn't want them to always be on each other's side and in each other's matches and involved with each other's stuff. Like FTR had FTR's matches in their business. Jeff Cobb had Jeff Cobb's business. You know, Danielson had his business, and actually, you know, we'll get to that. You know, anyone who was in the Orton had his business, you know, where he was doing his own deal. So that was a big part of what that was all about.
You made Randy Orton a bounty hunter, and I am amazed that no one has ever thought to use him that way before, because he's so perfect for it.
I think it's because Randy Orton's too independent of a person and has his own desires of being world champion that it never came up.
Well, and that's why, you know, at this stage of Randy's career, it was a perfect thing for him. You know, when he was a younger gun and a younger lion and he was more hungry for world title glory, you know, that would be this perfect spot for him. But if he's teaming with Matt Riddle, then he can very easily team up with FTR and Jeff Cobb and go punt people when he needs to, like Titus O'Neil. Selling the punt again as something dangerous.
Mm-hmm. And I will say, in my opinion, of all three of our shows, the best faction was Cult of Cornette, because you used it so differently than me and Skyler used our factions.
Well, and it needed to be something, and there was still a faction that was still kind of a faction with everything with the Undisputed Era.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so it was, because I had another faction, but that was a completely different vibe and a completely different energy to it. And that was part of what I wanted to do, was try and make everyone feel as important as I could based on things that they were feasibly able to accomplish. Mm-hmm. You know, the whole, look what AEW's doing now with Cole and Roddy. I did that 2 years ago. You know, it's all of this stuff that it all seems to be very relative in coming together. MJF's title run, that I basically had, you know, in the books, or at least I was preparing to do it for a long time. Mm-hmm. You know, I don't know how much I love, you know, even Brian Cage, he turned out to be a dipshit, but there was a time that he was actually one of my top guys, but neither of you complained about it at the time, because presentation is key.
Yeah.
And, you know, even though we had to deal with Santina Marella, and I did my damnedest to make that work.
Dude, speaking of that, my absolute favorite part of ACPW was the promos you would do, especially when you would do Jim Cornette promos. Those were so hilarious and just so accurate to how they would present themselves. It was so much fun listening whenever you would go off like that.
And a lot of those, I would never come up with lines beforehand.
Oh yeah, we could tell.
Right there.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it was all spontaneous, because I couldn't do that. I've never been one to be able to write down thoughts and you know, do that. Like, I'm always like right off the cuff, which is why sometimes you can tell my stuff is right off the cuff, especially when I don't have a good ending. But it was.
I mean, that's the thing, though, and I don't want to like ruin your thunder, but part of it is that we never scripted our promos, or if we did, maybe we did a line or two, because we needed the freedom to say what we needed to in the moment and what felt right.
Yeah.
Yeah. And knocking fans, whether they were there or not, was always a blast.
Yes, it was.
The Roanoke, Virginia episode, where I literally just took a big dump on that entire town. and their teeth.
Yeah.
It was just, it was all, every episode I tried to make feel different and have a more important. Every night had something, at least one big thing happening on it. And I think even though there were some episodes that were average and some that were really good, the fact of like the super card that came out of Winter Warfare 3, like we said before, there was no topping that. That was the show I am the most proud of. Sell out Madison Square Garden. You know, the world championship between Cody and MJF. You have Stone Cold stunning Jim Cornette. You know, it had it all. Walter beating Jeff Cobb, you know, and demonstrating that. Even CM Punk's little brief flirtation with Brock Lesnar that I had.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I was lucky enough to be able to set some level of standard for what I wanted while using plot devices like the over-the-top rope disqualification, which, you know, was very helpful during certain moments, including that feud with Cody and Dustin.
Mm-hmm.
You know, all of those ways that I was doing a Dusty finish, you know, randomly. You know, creating the finishes, I think, was my favorite part.
You did come up with some very creative
some
ones.
of the finishes I made. But I guess that's it for me as far as, you know, what I liked. It was really fun to do it, but eventually you hit a wall, and once you realize that you've hit that wall, you know, it's a lot harder to get the passion for it, and I think that's also a part of the reason why we're kind of looking at this retrospectively here today. And then that leads us to Josh again. And then we'll give each other some compliments all around, and then we'll talk about what we would have done before we head to the surprise.
Yeah, before we take our sick little babies behind the woodshed. We couldn't bear taking to the vet. We gotta put a slug in the back of her head. She was a good old boy. But anyway.
That's too fucking expensive, bro.
Yeah.
You know how much vets are charging right now to save booking promotions? No, fuck that.
Yeah.
I mean, here's the thing: is that we could, if we want to, revive this concept in the future. It's just right now we're going to shift to other things.
Yeah, we're kind of tired of it at this point. But I had the third wheel show, SCCG South Kakanmalaki Championship Grappling, or Grassling if you're of that persuasion. And like they discussed earlier, they started like a year ahead of me, and I was like, at first I was like, I'm not too fond of the concept. They won me over. Their shows were so good that they converted me. I am now a Jehovah's fantasy booker witness person. And I'm going door to door saying, hey, would you like to talk about our Lord and Savior, Jim Cornette? This took a weird turn. This took a weird turn.
I don't know if Matt Hardy would appreciate that.
But yeah, I was like, and then I started having my own ideas, and the identity of my show, it did have, you know, a bit of a wacky nature to it, because, I mean, look at who's fucking booking the show. But I was also trying to capture the vibe of, I'm still really fond of the 2008, early 2009 era of SmackDown, because it felt like just a fun wrestling show. And I'm also fond of, like, 2002 to 2004 I like SmackDown, because it's the more wrestling-oriented WWE show. And I wanted to try to make...
Always has been, always will be.
Yeah, always has been, always will be. And I wanted to try to make something kind of in that vein. Plus, I wanted to bring in some New Japan guys. Some guys that I liked. Nick Gage for that one thing that I did with him, and then put a slug in the back of his head. Which, that's probably...
There is a slug in his head. That's his brain.
Yeah.
Slug.
If you tried to execute him with a shot to the brain, there's a good chance you'll miss, because it's microscopic. He doesn't have a brain. He has one brain cell, and it's barely hanging on. That, I think, is the best well-booked thing I did in SCCG, because at the beginning of my draft, YouTube buried the shit out of my draft, and it was hilarious. Because, I mean, I gave you every reason to. My first draft pick was Nick Gage, and then my last male draft was Santino Marella. And I will never forget the reaction to the first main event of Palmetto Power, Santino Marella versus Nick Gage in a South Carolina death match. The look on Sean's face in that live stream, is...
But I will tell you something, though. That might be one of my favorite matches that you ever did.
Yes.
Because of how much of a swerve, or how much of a good angle that led to.
I fucked the fans in the best...
setting up for something so much more important than what it looked like on paper. So that did surprise me where you took it. And I know you kind of hooked me into your show just from that first episode, which is what you want out of a pilot.
Yes, and it's an example of... Because there's a way to fuck the fans in the best way possible, and then there's a way, just fucking the fans by not having Cody Rhodes win the title from Roman.
Still a bad decision.
Still, to this day, a bad decision. But, yeah, and I had that idea, and I was like, dude, Sean and Skyler are going to think I'm out of my mind, and I'm just going to have an absolute clown show. But then when I did it, I hooked you guys in, and I came up with one of the strangest factions ever. We weren't entertained, but... I feel like it worked for a little bit, although when we get to it later, I was planning on making some adjustments to that stable, especially coming out of the second pay-per-view. And
who would have thought that in 2023, Tyrus is NWA champion and Santino Marella is actually wrestling for Impact?
I know, right?
You revived their careers back into wrestling.
Yes, I did.
Into wrestling.
Dude, if I find out that Santino Marella on Impact is using that submission that I gave him in SCCG, I will actually sue somebody.
Oh man.
But and another one of my favorite, I had some of the most absolute "what did you just say" moments on when I was cutting promos for people. Specifically,
I love the children.
Specifically, the Bray Wyatt laughing and "I love the kids" walks away, mic drop. And
that is the best promo you did in SCCG.
Because, it was perfect. It was
so simple and it was so effective, and
yes.
It just cracked me the fuck up.
And honestly, like we were talking about earlier where we don't script things, I actually had written down an actual promo for him to speak, and I had some lines that I wanted to get through. But right before I started, my brain went, dude, what if you said this? It would be so funny. And I went with it, and you reacted the way you did, and I was like, that's good enough. That's it. I'm done. That's all that needed to be said.
Yeah, that was it. That was perfection right there.
Yes. And I also really like... Another one of my favorite things is me and Skyler together with NWL and SCCG, we basically turned Piper Niven into Godzilla.
Yeah.
And
that you had no idea how to do.
Well, you gave me a good start, and I went with it.
Yes. And dear God, JR.
Yeah.
JR got murdered.
Yeah, and that was so funny because you at the beginning of the show, I remember you said, "What if it hit?" Well, you said something to the effect of, "And it hit JR." 2 segments later.
And then seconds later, that actually is what happened.
Piper Niven threw the steel steps right in JR's face.
Oh, man.
Oh, good times with a good old South Kakalaki Championship Grappling. And even though it didn't have as long of a run as ACPW and NWL did, I still had a great time doing it. Although, not gonna lie, I'm doing TAW, I'm doing UCT, I'm doing XAW, I'm doing all these other things on my other show. I simply do not have the brain power to book all of these shows. I'm not gonna Tony Khan. I'm not gonna Tony Khan book Dynamite, Rampage, Collision, ROH, Dark Elevation, Light, De-escalation. All these shows that Tony Khan's trying to do because I simply just cannot.
AEW de-escalation.
Yeah.
People get mad and they sit down and they just sit and have therapy in the ring.
That would have worked wonders in the whole entire CM Punk versus the Elite debacle.
I know. Yeah, if only they.
That's why it never happened. It would have worked.
Because it would have worked.
Yeah.
But yeah, I said and honestly, when you and Skyler both said that in the chat that you were planning on just stopping this, I was kind of relieved because mentally I was kind of exhausted from SCCG.
Yeah, and that's kind of where it ended up. Is that we'll talk a little bit about what our future plans were here, and before we kind of get into the kind of the wrap up of this whole idea, because the the big deal that I was going to do, just a couple of the major angles, and we'll start with me, then we'll go to Sky. So what I was leaving off eventually was that MJF and Mark Briscoe, MJF was going to beat, and that was the other thing, like getting Mark Briscoe right after the whole tragedy with Jay, you know, and leading up to that. You know, that was going to be the big moment. I was going to have his big main event thing. I wasn't really going to do much with Mark Briscoe after that, I won't lie. It was kind of just for that one deal. But MJF...
And neither is AEW because he got injured and is going to be out for at least a year.
Yeah, God damn. God damn
But
it.
that was a layup that you were going to sink that Tony Khan didn't even attempt to make. Tony Khan doesn't even miss layups. He doesn't take them.
Yeah. He literally technical fouls and puts himself on the bench.
Basically, yeah.
But in case, the one thing I miss is the Jeff Cobb Bryan Danielson match that was gonna take down in Cincy. I was finally gonna have the thumbtack spot that I promised.
And Skyler would have
Here's how I was gonna do it. Just quickly, here's how I was gonna do it. Basically, during the promo, they're gonna be in the back. You know, Jeff Cobb and Jim Cornette. And Jeff Cobb's going to, like, say something, actually, into the mic with Tony. And Jim Cornette's going to notice, like, a whiteboard, like a corkboard behind them. And on the top of that corkboard is, like, a little package of thumbtacks that Jim was going to take. And then later on, basically when Danielson's hovered over the ropes, Cornette would take them and just shove them into the face of Danielson. And Danielson would freak out, and, you know, Cobb would then do his thing and get the win and blah, blah, blah. So I was going to have Corny do it, and that was the only way I was going to justify being able to bring thumbtacks into the ring, was if Jim had seen them on top of a corkboard where you used them earlier in the night. But
you're not going to use them in every show?
Yeah, not in every show, and not blood in every show. Yeah, then Alexa Bliss went and got herself pregnant, so I couldn't have her beat Baszler. And which I was going to have do it because I was going to have the, you know, the student becomes the teacher moment, the Kevin Nash, Shawn Michaels deal, where Alexa Bliss wins the belt and then Camille wins it from Alexa Bliss. You know, that's where that was headed, as I had that going on. Nick Aldis was going to get involved between Mickey and Camille, which was going to lead to
a lucky man right there.
Road.
That's a lucky man right there.
But the big one that was going to be the big deal that I was going to have take place was kind of leading up into Winter Warfare. The debut of AJ Styles, who is the guy that Jeff Jarrett brought in, first to beat Eli Drake. Then I was going to push him right up to the top and have him beat MJF for the belt at the show in July or August or whenever I was going to do it. Mm-hmm. Now, before I continue, I want to hear what Skyler's reaction to that is.
Okay, but what would you have done to piss me off about that?
So, here's why I would have gotten mad, because after AJ Styles wins the belt from MJF, the next week Jarrett would have been like, all right, AJ, pay up. I brought you in, I brought you here, I got you the belt, and now because of the contract you signed with me, it's time to give me that world's championship. And AJ would have been like, no, that's not what the contract reads. It reads you get a title shot. And MJF would be like, well, that's bullshit because it's my belt and neither of you actually deserve it. And so eventually my main event for Winter Warfare was going to be the one and only triple threat match I was ever going to have. AJ Styles versus MJF versus Jeff Jarrett.
Okay, that's it. Thank God we're ending it.
I told you.
Damn.
I told you, Josh, again, that Skyler would hate that.
Dude, Skyler just wrestled the gun away from us and put a slug in the back of ACPW for you.
Wait, it got better.
Oh, no.
Because you know what one of the co-main events was going to be?
What?
Cody Rhodes versus Johnny Knoxville.
Thank the Lord.
This was based. You were the one who gave me Johnny Knoxville. But
no,
this was my idea.
No, I was the one that gave you Johnny Knoxville, Sean.
Yes. But Johnny Knoxville was going to come out and basically Andy Kaufman ACPW. And he was going to issue open challenges to anyone in there, and literally no one was going to answer him. No one. Week after week after week, until Johnny Knoxville finally was getting pissed, going, you know what, you all fans suck, all these wrestlers suck, they don't respect me. And that's when Cody was going to come out and basically take up for pro wrestling and be like, well, nobody comes out here because nobody respects you. And nobody respects you because you are a literal jackass. And you don't care about the wrestling business, you care about the dollars you can make off of the wrestling business. And whether you'd like to believe it or not, some people actually take the wrestling business seriously, like I do. And so if you want a match so bad, then step into one of the greatest former world champion wrestling royalty, and I will make sure that you never step foot in this wrestling business ever again, which is exactly what would have happened. I'm not saying he would have gotten a pile driver, but he would have Knoxville would have gotten stretchered out of the building, and the fans would have eaten it up. I promise you that.
I absolutely would have.
But that was that, and then a couple other fun ones. Another one I was aiming towards was Jeff Cobb and the Guns, who were going to be the replacement for FTR after they defected after the cult. Speaking of making some moves, and swapping people around. It was going to be Jeff Cobb and the Guns with Jim Cornette versus Imperium in this, what I was going to call a Chamber of Carnage match, which was kind of like an Elimination Chamber. We never really got to flesh it out. But basically, Imperium was going to win and Jim Cornette was going to leave ACPW, which is also kind of an indicator that it was time to end it. I think. And then the last one, just for fun, I was going to have Danielson and CM Punk face each other because I meant to do that last year and it never happened, so I had to take Moxley instead. And the other match I was going to have was in my effort to rehabilitate number one Nick Nemeth. He was going to take on Logan Paul.
Oh.
The reaction from you both.
That would have been fun. That would have been, no, that wasn't a, oh God. That was a, oh, I'm sad we're not getting that.
That was
now.
an oh God for me.
Yeah, but you don't know where it was hit. I mean, again, that's the fun of, that was what the fun of this was. On paper, what you hear of what I would have played, it sounds like, oh, why would you do that? But when you heard how it all began and how it was woven together, then you wouldn't have minded this. Because as Jim Cornette said, the job of a booker is not to give the people what they want. It's to make the people want what you want them to want. And if you're good at it, then they'll want it. And that is kind of the way that I always tried to book in ACPW. And I think that I would have eventually, with Alexa Bliss and Camille, keeping the women important, Authors of Pain with Ellering versus FTR was going to be the, where FTR win the belts for the second time. Was going to be on that. So there were places it was going, and there were some interesting things to go with. Mercedes Moné and Dr. Britt was still there until, she went and got herself hurt. Who knows what I would have been able to do with Willow Nightingale. Now that I saw her and now see the potential star that she is,
Until AEW ruins her.
Yeah.
Well, we'll give that, 2-3 weeks.
Hours.
And, yeah. Well, thankfully they don't give her 2 hours of television time all at once. But that's safe for Moxley. But in any case, so that's kind of where ACPW was headed. So it was starting to get, a little zany, which is why there's no beating. Jeff Jarrett is no Stone Cold Steve Austin. I think that's a pretty fair statement to say.
I also think that is a very fair statement. And suggesting otherwise would have given me a stroke.
Yes. Very nice. Then there's a ref bump.
Yeah.
Don't you find it funny that the guy who ended up having the most successful career of TNA in the long run was Danny Angles, the referee? From taking constant bumps and taking constant ref bumps, and now he's in every Roman Reigns match where he's taking constant ref bumps.
What a career!
What a career this guy ought to be in the WWE Hall of Fame. Danny Angles has put the work in. But anyway, By the way, Titus O'Neil on commentary. That probably would not have lasted very long if he was still continuing to want to call the police, because we can't do that every show. But it's still what I did with Titus O'Neil. That is the thing I'm probably the most proud of in ACPW, because that was a personal vendetta of mine, and I still believe that Titus O'Neil had that in him. It just manifested itself in a different way.
Absolutely.
Now, what was NWL planning to do?
Well, what wasn't I planning to do? I had a lot of things for season 4 that I was going to get around to doing, and some of it would have been good and some of it would have been bad for sure. The first things first is that the tag team titles were going to be hot potatoed this year. So the year started with DIY holding the belts. And it would have led to Awesome Theory and Rex Steiner to get the belts next after them. That was actually going to be the next show that we recorded, was the two of them winning the tag team titles. And then they would have held it until Wrestle Festival, when a returning Rey Mysterio and Dominic Mysterio win the tag team titles to become the first ever father-son tag team champions, after Rey Mysterio repented his ways and apologized to his father about shoving him off for Eddie.
Okay.
Wow.
And then the next show, they were getting beaten by the tag team of Dijak and Dexter Loomis, Hardcore Justice.
Oh, jeez.
Dear God.
Geez. Well,
So remember when I was doing those promos of Dexter Loomis and Dijak beating up people in random New York City streets?
Yes.
You basically were doing the movie Dune, but in New York City.
Yep, they were going to become a tag team of outlaw justice people, basically that were running Punisher style.
I honestly would have digged that.
They would have had the look. They definitely would have had the look down.
Right, and again, it's one of those things where I told you guys that I had a gimmick for both of them. It was either going to really work or it was going to really suck. It would depend on my execution. The plan was that Dexter Loomis was still not going to speak. He was going to be silent but deadly. Dijak does all the talking.
Probably for the better.
But given the way that Dijak has done in NXT, I'm hopeful he gets back in the main roster as Dijak. I hope they take him seriously as a main event guy.
I still have the nightmares.
I think that they're starting to sell a lot of T-Bar merchandise on live events. You've been seeing it. The trends.
The T-Bar is pretty low.
Now, here's the thing. I admit that I did kind of cheat a little bit by having Kurt Angle basically involved in the special attraction match every year. But let's be honest, okay? That's what Kurt Angle would do.
Yeah, he was perfect for it.
I don't think we would have mind. I don't think anyone would mind, to tell you the truth.
Right. So the special attraction. Well, here's the thing. We recorded an episode, me and Sean, that again never made it to air. Basically, what happens, and I'll tell it to Joshua so he'll get the joy of this. The show would have started with the Kurt Angle paying the Repo Man to repo another one of Shotzi Blackheart's vehicles.
Yeah, a rare crystal appearance, but what a valuable one.
Oh my God.
Only for Shotzi Blackheart to steal the tow truck with the military vehicle. And then Kurt Angle would have been hit by a car as he went to the garage to try and figure out where the tow truck was.
Shotzi's like, I did it for the people.
Kurt Angle.
Oh, man.
Oh, yeah, who did run over Kurt Angle?
So the plan was that Bully Ray, who Sean gave me in the draft,
Oh,
would become the
my
new sheriff of NWL.
God.
Yes.
He would have become the new sheriff. He would have led the investigation to find out who ran over Kurt Angle. He wouldn't get very far because people would deny it. It would be him. It'd be Kevin Owens would be a suspect. Shotzi Blackheart would be a suspect. It would have led to more comedy segments until it was revealed that Bully Ray himself ran over Kurt Angle.
I would have been 100% down for that.
Absolutely.
Hearing Bully Ray's British New York accent actually trying to lay down the law in NWL, I would have been all for that.
Me too. That would have been amazing.
It would have led to a match between Bully Ray and Kurt Angle at Wrestle Festival, with Kurt Angle winning. And it's okay if I tell the promo right now.
Sure.
Yeah, I did.
So it would have been afterwards the match. Kurt Angle would be like, okay, Bully Ray, tell me, why did you run me over? Why did you try to kill me? And Bully Ray would have been like, I can't say. Either you tell me right now or I break your ankle. And Bully Ray's like, please don't. I was paid to do it. And then the audience will, ooh, who paid you then? And Bully Ray's like, I can't say. Either you do it right now or I'm going to break your ankle. Tell me right now, Bully Ray. And then Bully Ray, in his best soap opera impression, would have said, Pat McAfee.
Who's on commentary.
And who was on commentary, as you remember, because he got punished for losing that match in the third Wrestle Festival and had to do commentary for an entire year with Wienershire Cole.
Yes.
Pat McAfee would have stood up from commentary, walked into the ring, admitted he did it, and attacked Kurt Angle.
Oh, that would have been so good.
And it would have led to another Pat McAfee-Kurt Angle match, except Pat McAfee tries to win. And then he eventually does and becomes the new owner of National Wrestling League.
Oh, that would have been so good.
Yeah, but then ESPN would have bought it, and then Disney would have bought it, and then you would have lost a lot of money, bro. That's a slippery slope.
Yeah.
Financially speaking, that's a slippery slope. But still, I like the Angle a lot, though.
Yeah.
Kurt Angle a lot.
I was about to say.
Not that I don't mind the idea of Kurt Angle being in charge, but there was more potential for fun if Pat McAfee was my general manager.
Yeah.
Well, it had also run its course, too. Kind of in the same vein that the Cult of Cornette ran its course over the course of 3 years. I think also Kurt, as a general manager, had a lot of really good moments, but that gimmick was also starting to kind of reach its tail end as well. You know, in the same way that Arn Anderson's time did, and, you know, that changed it and I switched it to JR. You know, and it's, you know, sometimes you got to do that. You know, you just got to shift some things around, you know, so things don't stagnate.
Right. What else would I have done? There would have been a feud in the mid-card with Kazuchika Okada versus Seth Rollins.
Ooh.
Interesting.
And I had started out with Okada beating Seth Rollins in his first match. Then, again, it would have been a thing where Okada was going to feud with both Rollins and Kevin Owens at the same time.
Okay.
Have Seth go, I'm the Wham Maker.
And it would have culminated with Sami Zayn, who would return from injury after Kevin Owens injured him, and lead to a tag team match. Kevin Owens and Seth Rollins versus Okada and Sami Zayn.
That would have been interesting.
That would have been an interesting tag match. I'd be in for that. So you really had good ideas as well, you know, working.
Thank you. I would have had Powerhouse Will Hobbs and Bolt and Bobby Lashley continue their feud, but the idea being that Powerhouse Will Hobbs used to look up to Bobby Lashley, but then it would have been the whole thing of never meet your heroes. Because, and Bobby Lashley would have said, don't try to be a second Bobby Lashley because you can't be me. And again, it would have led to Powerhouse Will Hobbs beating Bobby Lashley and eventually getting a world title shot. I don't know if I would have had him beat Alexander Hammerstone. It depended on the reception that he would have gotten.
Right. Well, and he's still developing as a talent, too. And, you know, obviously going into AEW does nobody any favors.
Yeah.
But by then, he would have progressed under NWL standards.
At the very least, he would have been worthy of a title shot.
Yes. And
then from there, I don't know if I would have had anybody beat Hammerstone. I may have given him a year-long reign, but it would have depended on if anybody would have progressed, like Hobbs or like Okada, if I felt like he was good enough on his own to take the title. I need to see the reception for that because, like, again, what helped a lot was your guys' reaction to guys and seeing who could be ready to be a main event caliber person.
Oh, totally. That always helps, is kind of hearing the feedback you know, I loved hearing the feedback of you, Skyler, anytime that I did something, because that also reassured me, you know, especially when you really hated what I was doing with Cody. I'm like, oh, good, this is working. You know, this is actually working successfully. So I always loved hearing the reactions to that. And that also meant that as what happened a lot of the times, we would have to change stuff on the fly based on that alone.
Right, and also, again, like, what would have happened in real life? Would someone have gotten better? Would there be enough of a point to be like, okay, I know he's going to be good in the future, but what is he right now?
And that's what wrestling is. Timing is everything in the world of pro wrestling.
Yep, I would have had Roman Reigns basically destroyed the new bloodline, except he would lose to Jacob Fatu, and then I would Hollywood Roman.
All right. I could do that, work with that.
So that eventually it would have led to a Wrestle Festival 4 main event of Jacob Fatu versus Alexander Hammerstone.
That would have been that's a Hoss match. That's a Hoss match.
Which was a great match in real life, and I'm pretty sure it would be great for a main event. I don't know if I would have Jacob Fatu win, but you never know, right?
Yeah, it would depend on how it all goes, but we'll have to see years down the line whenever it is that we pick this back up, if we pick it up in this capacity.
Yep. Now, Joshua, I will pass the baton to you, and you tell us about what you would have done.
All right, so I did have some more ideas leading into the third pay-per-view. I think I was calling it Clash of the Kakalaki Clash, which would have, if I was a wrestler, that'd be my finishing move, the Kakalaki Clash. What
would you have done as a finishing move?
Probably a Snapmare Driver and call it the Kakalaki Clash. Or just do a Snapmare Driver, call it some Dragon Ball Z related thing, and Sean would groan every time. Or not get the reference at all.
A spear bomb.
He would say, "Oh, so Samuel L. Jackson. I understand that reference." But
Snakes on a plane.
call them snakes on a Vegeta. But basically the big thing that I would have done, that I hinted at earlier, I would have made some adjustments to We Weren't Entertained. For example, in the next show, was going to, since I had Braun Strowman return and save whoever the fuck it was from being attacked by We Weren't Entertained, the main event of the next Palmetto Power would have been a rematch between Braun Strowman and Tyrus, except it would have been a street fight.
Don't close it.
And the main event finish would have been they're fighting in the corner, and Braun Strowman gives Tyrus a power bomb, and Tyrus goes through the ring, kind of like when Big Show chokeslammed the Undertaker through the ring. And there would have been a cave-in of the ring, and Tyrus would have been injured, and that would have been me writing him off forever. And I would have eventually replaced Tyrus the next week, I think, with Wardlow. So basically, I would swap out Tyrus for Wardlow and have him be the powerhouse.
That would have been a massive improvement.
He would have been the powerhouse of We Weren't Entertained. And also, in that same vein, that same week, I would have had a match between The Bar, Sheamus and Cesaro, versus Primo and Epico. And before the match starts, Anthony Corelli comes out and says, "Okay, so I gotta tell you guys something. If Primo and Epico, if you lose this match, The Bar is going to replace you on We Weren't Entertained. Bell rings, bro kick, 1, 2, 3. The Bar replaces Primo and Epico on We Weren't Entertained." So the new stable would be Anthony Corelli, The Bar, Wardlow, and Ron Killings, which I think would be a much needed improvement for the group overall. And
but Joshua, Tyrus is the NWA champion.
And
according to Billy Corgan, if you don't like Tyrus, you don't like wrestling.
Well, I must really not like wrestling then, and I don't know who Tyrus is. He's underneath my ring because he broke it, because he's big and immobile. But after that, at the next pay-per-view, it was going to be Nakamura versus Anthony Corelli. I didn't really have any big plans for Nakamura. It was basically just going to be me giving Anthony Corelli a clean win on pay-per-view, just to pad out his title reign. Then after that, John Morrison would have become #1 contender again to continue their feud. They would have a match on Palmetto Power, and John Morrison would almost win the belt several times and just barely lose in some kind of dirty way because of Anthony Corelli cheating. And then the next week, John Morrison would have been like, I want one more rematch with Anthony Corelli, and it would turn into at the 4th pay-per-view, it's a Rage in a Cage match, which is my version of Hell in a Cell. Anthony Corelli versus John Morrison. If John Morrison loses, he must leave SCCG. So at the 4th pay-per-view, they have a bloody, gruesome Rage in a Cage match where John Morrison finally wins the world title from Anthony Corelli and injures Anthony Corelli, and we don't see Anthony Corelli for a while. And it's also building a reputation with Rage in a Cage because the first one, Braun Strowman got injured. This one, Anthony Corelli gets injured. So basically, it's setting in the fans' minds, anytime we do a Rage in a Cage match, someone might get injured and we won't see them for a while, basically making it the most deadly match in SCCG. And then at some point later on, I was eventually going to have Absolute Ricky Starks turn heel and become the new leader of We Weren't Entertained. And I would change the name to something like the Absolute Mafia or something like that, something in that vein. And then I would have Absolute Ricky Starks and his cronies versus John Morrison, and eventually Ricky Starks would have taken the world title from John Morrison in some way, shape, form, or fashion. But another feud that I was really looking forward to getting into was the whole thing with Zack Sabre Jr. and Hook. Hook, of course, who was doing nothing in AEW, because no one does anything in AEW.
Jungle Boy. Jack Perry.
He's doing nothing in AEW, like I just said. So this was my idea for the feud. So I already brought up that Zack Sabre Jr. slapped Taz on commentary. Basically, it would have made to where there was a no contact policy between Hook and Zack Sabre Jr., where if they touch each other, the match at the 3rd pay-per-view for the Cruiserweight title would be off. So Zack Sabre Jr. one week would provoke Hook into actually attacking him, canceling the match. And in order to get the match back, there would be some kind of agreement where Taz would have to wrestle Zack Sabre Jr., and Hook would have to watch as Zack Sabre Jr. tortures Taz. And basically, the idea is if Taz accepts this match at all, Hook would get the match at the pay-per-view. So basically, and Hook can watch the match, but he can't interfere. So basically, it would be just like 10 minutes of Zack Sabre Jr. just torturing Taz, setting up for their pay-per-view match, where Hook, the babyface, would tap out Zack Sabre Jr. and win the title. So I was really excited about...
Hook and Taz go 10 minutes?
Or just not like them going back and forth, just Zack Sabre Jr. or like maybe 5 minutes or something like that.
Maybe 3 minutes with 7 minutes of in-ring intros.
But basically, Taz would get 0 offense, and it would just be Zack torturing him for minutes and minutes and minutes, with Hook being unable to interfere, and Taz saying, "Don't get in the ring, I'm trying to get you your match." And Zack just being a dastardly heel, torturing this guy's dad. And then Hook gets revenge at the pay-per-view, taps out Zack Sabre Jr. and wins the title. I was really looking forward to doing that, too, because I loved being a nasty British asshole with Zack Sabre Jr. And I was going to have the Bar win the tag team titles from Shelton Benjamin and... what was the other? I can't even remember. Cedric Alexander. He's so forgettable at this point. So the Bar would have had multiple championships, and I was gonna have Tetsuya Naito defeat Samoa Joe for the Internet Championship to start a feud with someone else. I was going to have a feud between babyface Ricky Starks and Naito for the Internet title. And at some point, I was going to bring back Kenny Omega and have him feud with John Cena, like I originally wanted to do. And the match would be John Cena versus Kenny Omega. If Kenny Omega wins, John Cena loses his general manager spot. But I hadn't decided who was going to win that or not. And on the women's side of things, I was going to have Piper Niven, because the next pay-per-view, the main event was going to be Piper Niven versus Maiko Satomura in a first blood match for the women's championship. I was gonna have Piper Niven win and basically just continue to make her an absolutely psychotic, unhinged monster at the top of the women's division.
Just like Shorty G.
Yes. And that was a Shorty G guarantee. And
That's right.
I still think Shorty G is one of the best gimmicks we ever came up with.
yeah, and
That is the crowning achievement of all of our fantasy booking, is just how well we made Shorty G. We turned a Vince McMahon gimmick into something palatable.
yeah, and as far as that guy, I can't even remember. I think his name was Taven or something that you made me draft, Sean. I was gonna pair him with Bray Wyatt because I had no idea what to do with him.
Oh, Matt Taven? Matt Taven's pretty solid.
No, Vincent Marsilio.
Oh yeah,
Oh,
Vincent
yeah,
Marsilio.
Yes.
I was
Yes. Yes.
I was gonna pair him with
He
Bray
could have
Wyatt.
matched Bray Wyatt. He and Bray Wyatt could have worked together.
Yeah. And
But-
that's basically all of the ideas that I had. And yeah.
Well, I'm glad that we have now at least put a pause on this monstrous circle jerk we've been doing. But I do have to say, we really have expressed a lot of our creativity and really our passion for wrestling in this fantasy booking.
Yeah.
And that's something that I really think is valuable, all in all, over the course of what it is that we do, especially as three guys, just three idiots on a podcast, just talking about whatever it is we talk about. But it goes to show that all it takes is a little bit of effort. And sometimes it is really just too many cooks spoil the broth, as is, I think, the case in WWE. And sometimes if you have a really, really, really bad chef that listens to bloated, alcoholic, former lion-hearted chefs, then you get what you get in both companies now. And I also have to say congratulations to all three of us. We avoided the cancer of Chris Jericho on all three of our shows.
Yeah, exactly.
And the second that if Chris Jericho showed up at any one of our shows, we would have had to cut it off right there. So thankfully, we pre-screened ourselves and came up negative. So
Yes.
Well, but Skyler, I heard there was something of a surprise, and I doubt it has anything to do with chocolate or cake. So I know I'm going to be at least a little bit disappointed.
Well, here's the thing, is that we like the idea of the fantasy booking. It's just that, we're not going to do it on the company scale. But my man Sean had an idea. What's that idea?
So I guess the surprise is me pitching the surprise that I didn't know. So, okay, I am surprised.
That is the most co-host thing I've ever heard.
You're welcome.
He literally just took the tennis racket and just lobbed it back into the court. I didn't even know we were playing tennis.
Skyler would make a magnificent ball girl.
Wow, this is all right. Well, then I guess I will pull my own weight here on my own program. This was a surprise. I wasn't expecting it. This was definitely a surprise. So we're going to be doing some different ideas with booking, as far as we have kind of a couple different things. As far as we still want to cut some promos. So we may be doing promos where we will almost play Clue with it, where it's here's the person you cut a promo on, here's the subject matter, and this is the pay-per-view you're aiming towards, and we make a promo. So we're going to be doing something like that, but we're also going to be doing a kind of a book-off, as I have come up with it, where one of us gives the other two a wrestling scenario to book. And then the following time we're on the podcast, we will pitch our ideas.
Which is what we're going to do right here, right now. Because I have something for you two.
Until I finish talking about the rules and instructions first, Mr. Surprise. Now you explain the rules. Now you woke the dragon. Now you got to let me talk. So
Put your dick back in your pants, Skyler.
The monster.
That's right. So what's going to happen is, we're going to get an idea, a subject pitched. We will have the next week or two, or however long it takes for us to finish this podcast and make the next one. And we are going to come up with our ideas, and then you, the people, are going to have to get off your behinds the way that Skyler has motivated me to get off mine to talk about this. And you are going to have to vote, and we will have polls that we are going to whip out, and you are going to cling onto those polls, whichever one you found was the better booked show, and the winner will get something, and the loser will get punished and have to watch a match of the winner's choosing, good, bad, or indifferent, and record their reaction, which will probably be pain depending on what match we're talking about. And so I suppose somebody has got a prompt here for Josh again and myself to contemplate heading into the next episode. What do you got for us, Sky?
Well, I certainly have a challenge for both of you, if you accept it. Do you both accept my challenge?
I'd like to hear this challenge before I accept any challenges.
I'm going in balls deep, no regrets.
All right. Here's what I want you guys to do. The challenge I have is to book Finn Balor to win the world title in WWE.
Okay.
Skyler, I want to kiss you on the lips so bad.
Not those lips. Now, to be clear, it's not going to be Roman Reigns' title because I don't think that's too unrealistic. So,
all right, Skyler, you even the scale.
Yeah, the last time Finn Balor went after Roman Reigns, it did not work out well for anyone.
right. So it has to be the WWE World Heavyweight Championship.
Okay.
The only condition I'm going to make is that Finn Balor cannot leave WWE.
Well, if he wins the WWE title, why would he? Okay, you're on. All right.
The reason why that I don't want you to pull he goes away and learns a new hold and comes back in 3 years and wins the world title thing.
All right. Well, okay. What pay-per-view is he winning this belt at? Give us that.
That's for you guys. That's for you guys to figure out.
Okay. What's the latest we can do it?
Let's say again. Let's say at least by WrestleMania 41.
Oh, okay. All right, fine. So we got a year and a half to book Finn Balor into something useful. Okay.
Yeah.
I failed at this once. I will not fail at this again.
To be fair,
Oh, gotcha.
WWE
How do you
also
feel?
failed at this repeatedly, so you're not alone, Sean.
That's right. Well, then I'll tell you what. And Skyler, you will be able to at least cast your vote as to which one you like better on the next show, whether it's mine or Josh again. And I actually implore you, Skyler, to think about this yourself. And I want you to bring one to the table. And we will all pitch one. And we will see who wins and who is going to have to watch a crappy match.
And if you want to decide...
Watch Queen Charmel versus some lady from TNA.
And if you want to decide who wins best booking decision of this particular stipulation, you can go to DraftKings right now and cast your vote.
But not really, though. You really actually have to go to our channel and like and share and subscribe and hit that bell button so that when we post, you know the most.
But Sean, I want our fans to develop a gambling addiction.
Yeah, but we're not making any money off that. If they're going to develop a gambling addiction, we should make money at their expense.
Now you're talking like a promoter.
You can't pre-promote DraftKings so they go spend money on DraftKings that we're not getting any of. That is so counterproductive. Because the fact of the matter is there's only one place where you can find the most quality wrestling talk on the planet, fantasy or otherwise, masturbatory or otherwise, and that's here on the Core Martial Podcast and from time to time TAW game.
Yeah.
But Skyler, you brought us into this mess, so I'm going to have you drag us out of this mess.
Yeah, kicking and screaming.
Great. Yes, leave the memories alone. I'm going to cry like Ric Flair in the corner.
Right, because you have to book Finn Balor. Josh, again, thank you for joining us.
You're welcome, my good sir, and thank you for making Sean have to book Finn Balor and have him win.
I don't think he's going to win. I don't know. Do you think you're going to win, Sean?
He has to win the world title, doesn't he?
Yep, but I don't think you're going to win.
He's got to win it. I'll make him win it.
Well, we'll see who and when after this commercial break.
win like Finn,